Would you still look at me the same way if you knew I had more money than everyone in this room combined? Ethan Cole asked the empty penthouse, watching his reflection in the glass as Manhattan glittered 80 floors below. At 38, Ethan had everything magazines claimed a man should want. Cole Meridian Holdings owned hotels, office towers, technology companies, and enough commercial real estate to make his name familiar on Wall Street. His apartment had a private elevator, his cars were stored in a temperature-controlled garage, and people changed their tone the moment they heard his last name. Yet on that cold November evening, Ethan felt poorer than he ever had. 3 hours earlier, he had ended another relationship. Vanessa had cried when he told her it was over, but the tears had stopped the instant he mentioned that the apartment in Paris would remain in his name. That tiny change in her expression had told him everything. It reminded him of Rachel, who had once joked that marrying Ethan was better than winning the lottery, and of Lauren, who had secretly photographed his financial documents for a gossip site. Even friendships had begun to feel transactional. Invitations arrived whenever someone needed an investor. Compliments came before requests. People laughed too loudly at jokes he knew were not funny. Ethan had started wondering whether anyone in his life actually liked him or simply liked standing near his fortune. His chief of staff, Noah Grant, had warned him that loneliness could make intelligent people do foolish things. Ethan was about to prove him right. He opened an old storage closet and pulled out a faded jacket his late father had worn decades earlier, before the Cole family became one of the wealthiest families in the country. He added worn jeans, scratched work boots, and a knit cap. Then he looked into the mirror again. The transformation was imperfect. His haircut was too expensive, his teeth too perfect, his posture too confident. So he let his beard grow for several days, stopped wearing his watch, and practiced becoming invisible. He told Noah he was taking personal time and instructed him to keep his location private unless there was an emergency. "You're planning something," Noah said. "I'm trying to answer a question." "Which question?" Ethan looked toward the windows. "Whether anyone can care about me when they think I have nothing." Noah stared at him. "That sounds less like an experiment and more like a disaster." Ethan gave a faint smile. "Maybe I need one." A week later, billionaire Ethan Cole vanished from his usual social circles, and a quiet man calling himself Eli began spending his afternoons near a modest diner in Queens. Ethan had chosen the neighborhood because none of his companies owned property there, and because he rarely visited it. He carried an old backpack containing only basic clothes, a cheap phone, and enough emergency cash to get home if necessary. He refused to use his credit cards. He ate inexpensive meals, spent hours in public libraries, and occasionally slept in a small rented room several miles away, though he told strangers he moved between shelters. The lie bothered him, but he convinced himself it was temporary. On the fourth evening, freezing rain swept through the city. Ethan sat beneath the awning of a closed store, watching hundreds of people hurry past. Some avoided eye contact. Others glanced at him and looked away. Then a woman in a dark green diner uniform stopped. She was carrying a paper bag and an umbrella that had nearly turned inside out in the wind. "You've been sitting here for 20 minutes, she said. Ethan looked up. "You were watching me?" "The diner window faces this corner." She studied him cautiously. "Are you hungry?" Ethan expected her to hand him a few dollars. Instead, she gave him the bag. Inside was a turkey sandwich, soup, and an apple. "I can pay you back someday," he said. She shook her head. "Then help somebody else someday." "Why? Why what? Why stop?" Her expression softened. "Because people keep acting like being broke makes someone invisible." She adjusted her umbrella. "It doesn't." Ethan had heard speeches from politicians, philanthropists, and corporate leaders about compassion. None of them had affected him like those two words. "It doesn't." "Amaya," she said. "Eli, there's a shelter 6 blocks east if you need somewhere warm. If it's full, come by the diner before closing. I know a church that sometimes has space." She started walking away, then turned. "And eat the soup first. It gets terrible when it's cold." Ethan watched her disappear into the rain, and for the first time since beginning his ridiculous experiment, he forgot that he was pretending. The next morning, he returned to the diner. Maya Bennett was working behind the counter, pouring coffee for a construction worker. She recognized him immediately, but did not make a scene. "Soup survive?" she asked. "Barely. Told you." Ethan sat at the far end of the counter. "Can I work for breakfast?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to. I want to." The manager, a broad-shouldered man named Frank Delaney, overheard them. After studying Ethan for several seconds, Frank pointed toward a stack of boxes near the kitchen. Storage room needs organizing. 2 hours. Breakfast and $20. Ethan almost laughed. His normal hourly income from investments could exceed what Frank offered in a year, but he nodded. Deal. He spent the morning moving supplies, cleaning shelves, and discovering that manual labor made his shoulders ache in places his personal trainer had apparently ignored. Maya teased him when he struggled with an old mop bucket. You ever worked a normal job before? Depends what you call normal. One where the mop wins. Then apparently not. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan kept returning. Frank gave him occasional work. Maya began saving leftover meals that would otherwise be thrown away. She never asked Ethan what had happened to him until one evening when they were closing. You don't talk like someone who's been on the street long, she said. Ethan continued wiping the counter. What does someone on the street sound like? Fair point. I had a job. Things went wrong. It was technically true, though in a way so misleading that guilt tightened his chest. Maya did not press him. Things go wrong faster than people think. You sound like you know. She looked through the window. My parents owned a small printing company when I was a kid. 23 employees. Everybody knew everybody. Then a giant corporation bought the buildings around us, changed contracts, squeezed suppliers, and buried businesses like ours under legal costs. My dad fought for years. We lost the company, then the house. Ethan stopped moving. What corporation? Meridian Development Group. The cloth slipped slightly from his hand. Meridian Development Group had eventually become part of Cole Meridian Holdings. It had been run by Ethan's father during the period Maya described. You've heard of them? Maya asked. Maybe. She laughed without humor. Everyone's heard of them now. Billionaire family, skyscrapers, magazine covers. People like that don't know families like mine exist. Ethan felt as though the floor had tilted beneath him. That night, he returned secretly to his penthouse and called Noah. I need everything we have on acquisitions and development disputes from 20 years ago involving small businesses in Queens. Noah was silent for a moment. This is about your experiment. It's about a woman named Maya Bennett. Ethan, just find it. By morning, 47 archived files were waiting in a secure digital folder. One name appeared repeatedly, Bennett Family Printing, owned by Robert and Diane Bennett. Ethan read memos written by executives he remembered from childhood dinners. The company had not technically broken the law. It had simply used its size to force smaller tenants into unfavorable agreements while buying surrounding properties. Bennett Printing had eventually collapsed. Ethan found an internal memo from a vice president estimating that the Bennetts would be unable to afford prolonged litigation. At the bottom was an approval from Ethan's father. Ethan stared at the signature for several minutes. He had begun pretending to be homeless to discover whether Maya could love him without his money. Now he had discovered that the money itself was tied to the wound she had carried most of her life. The secret had suddenly become far more dangerous than his disguise. Ethan returned to the diner the next day with the archived documents burned into his memory. Maya was smiling as she carried 2 plates toward a booth. Seeing her made him feel worse. You look terrible, she said when she reached him. Thanks. I mean more terrible than usual. That helps. She poured coffee. Bad night. Something like that. Maya leaned against the counter. You know, you're allowed to tell people when something's wrong. Ethan nearly laughed at the irony. I'm not sure you'd want to hear it. Try me. He wanted to confess right there. He imagined saying, my name is Ethan Cole. I'm worth billions. My father's company helped destroy your family business. I came here because I wanted to test whether someone could love me while believing I was poor. Instead, he said, I found out something about my family. Maya's expression softened. Good or bad? Bad. Can you fix it? I don't know. Then figure out whether fixing it is possible before you decide you're doomed. Her simple answer stayed with him. Over the following weeks, Ethan lived 2 lives more intensely than before. By day, he was Eli, cleaning tables, carrying boxes, helping Frank repair a broken storage shelf, and walking Maya home after late shifts. By night, he returned to Cole Meridian headquarters through a private garage, dressed in tailored suits, and met with lawyers and auditors about old development cases. He ordered an independent review of every small business dispute connected to his father's expansion strategy. Noah watched him transform the executive conference room into an archive. You realize, Noah said one night, You could simply tell Maya the truth. I know. Then why don't you? Ethan looked at the old Bennett file. Because every day I wait makes the truth worse. That is exactly why you should stop waiting. Ethan knew Noah was right, but fear had begun controlling him. Maya was no longer part of an experiment. She was the person he thought about when meetings became unbearable. She mocked his terrible diner coffee preferences, argued with him about old movies, and once spent 40 minutes helping a confused elderly customer understand a medical bill even though her shift had already ended. Ethan had dated actresses, executives, models, and heiresses. None had made him feel as peaceful as sitting beside Maya on a bench eating cheap pizza. One Saturday afternoon, Maya took him to a community center where she volunteered. Ethan repaired broken chairs and helped teenagers prepare resumes. A 17-year-old boy named Jamal asked what company Ethan had worked for before becoming homeless. Ethan hesitated. Finance. Maya overheard. Finance. A little. You told me you handled operations. Financial operations. She narrowed her eyes. You're suspiciously vague about everything. Ethan forced a smile. I'm mysterious. You're annoying. But something had changed in her expression. Later, while they walked toward the subway, she asked, How do you know what EBITDA means? Ethan nearly missed a step. What? Jamal's resume workshop. You were explaining business valuation to him. I read. You also corrected that volunteer's explanation of venture debt. I read a lot. Maya stopped walking. Eli, were you some kind of executive? He looked at her, searching for a safe answer and finding none. I worked around people with money. And then, things changed. She studied him for a long moment. You know what bothers me? What? Not that you don't tell me everything. Everybody deserves privacy. It's that sometimes I feel like you're choosing every sentence before you say it. Ethan's chest tightened. Maya, I'm not asking for your whole history. She started walking again. Just don't make me feel stupid for trusting you. That sentence followed him all night. The next morning, he told Noah, I'm telling her. Today. Tomorrow. After her shift. Why tomorrow? Because I need the restitution proposal finalized first. Noah shook his head. You're still trying to solve an emotional problem with corporate paperwork. No. I want proof that I'm correcting what happened. Then show her after you tell her who you are. Ethan nodded. Tomorrow. Meanwhile, Maya's suspicion took a different turn. During her lunch break, she saw a financial news segment playing silently on the diner television. The caption read, Ethan Cole returns to public view after weeks away from events. The screen displayed an old photograph of Ethan leaving a charity gala. Maya froze with a coffee pot in her hand. The man on television had shorter facial hair, perfect hair, and a tuxedo worth more than her monthly rent. But the eyes were the same. The shape of the jaw was the same. Even the slight crookedness in his smile was the same. Frank followed her gaze. That Cole guy, he said. Richest man under 40 or something. Maya barely heard him. She searched Ethan Cole on her phone. Hundreds of photographs appeared. In one, he was standing beside a private jet. In another, he was speaking at an economic summit. Another showed him on the cover of a business magazine beneath the headline, The Billionaire Rebuilding and Empire. Maya's hands became cold. She enlarged a photograph. There was no possibility of coincidence. Eli was Ethan Cole. She did not confront him that evening. Instead, she listened. When he arrived, he said he had spent the morning looking for steady work. Maya knew from an online article that Ethan Cole's company board had met that morning. When she asked where he had learned so much about finance, he said, old jobs. She watched his face and finally understood what had bothered her for weeks. He was not hiding pieces of his life. His entire identity was constructed. That night, Maya researched everything she could find about Ethan Cole and Cole Meridian Holdings. Then she discovered the connection she had never imagined. Meridian Development Group, the corporation that had ruined her parents, had been controlled by Ethan's father. Ethan had inherited enormous wealth from the same empire. Tears filled her eyes, but anger quickly replaced them. She had trusted him with the most painful story of her childhood, while he sat across from her knowing exactly who his family was. The following evening, Ethan waited outside the diner, ready to confess. Maya never came out. Frank told him she had switched shifts and left early. Ethan texted her. No answer. He called. Voicemail. Panic rose inside him. He decided that hiding for another minute was impossible. The next morning, he returned to Cole Meridian headquarters because the independent restitution plan required his signature. He arrived through the side entrance in a black sedan, wearing a charcoal suit. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, he heard his real name spoken behind him. Ethan. Maya stood 20 feet away. She had apparently followed the address listed online. Ethan stopped. The city seemed to disappear around them. Maya looked at the sedan, the security staff, the glass tower with Cole Meridian engraved above the entrance, and finally at him. "Say something," she said. Ethan dismissed the security team with a gesture. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "Yesterday." "After how many weeks of lying?" "Maya, please. Is your name even Eli?" No, her eyes glistened. "How much of it was real?" Ethan took a step toward her. "My feelings for you." She stepped back. "Don't. I started this before I met you. I wasn't targeting you. That's supposed to make it better?" "No. I wanted to know what life was like when nobody knew who I was. I wanted to know whether someone could care about me without caring about my money." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "So you tested me?" "At first, yes." "At first." Her voice rose. "Every meal I gave you, every time I worried you didn't have somewhere warm to sleep, every conversation where I told you things about my family. You knew you could walk back into this building whenever you wanted." "I know." "No, Ethan, you don't know. You pretended to have no choices. People who are actually homeless don't get to end the experiment." The words hit him harder than anything he had anticipated. "You're right." Maya's expression changed when she saw that he would not defend himself, but the pain remained. "And my family?" she asked. Ethan went still. "You knew Meridian destroyed my parents' business." "Not when I met you. I found out after you told me. And you kept coming back. I was investigating what happened, while pretending you had nothing to do with it. I was trying to fix it." Maya laughed once, bitterly. "Of course. The billionaire fixes everything." "Not everything." "Apparently not honesty." Ethan lowered his head. "No," Maya wiped her eyes. "I didn't care whether you had $10 or 10 billion. I cared that I thought you were real." She turned away. "Maya." She stopped, but did not face him. "I love you." Her shoulders stiffened. "You don't get to use that word to make the lie smaller." Then she walked away. Ethan did not follow. For the first time in years, there was nothing he could buy, negotiate, acquire, or command that would change what had happened. Over the next month, Maya ignored his messages. Ethan sent only 3. The first apologized. The second said he would respect her request for space. The third told her she would never have to respond. He sent no flowers, no jewelry, no car, no dramatic gifts. Instead, he continued the investigation into Cole Meridian's past. The independent review uncovered 28 families and 14 small businesses harmed by aggressive practices that had been legal but deeply unfair. Ethan called an emergency board meeting. Several directors opposed reopening decades-old disputes. "We have no legal obligation," one said. Ethan looked around the table. "I didn't ask what we were legally obligated to do. Shareholders could challenge this. Then tell them the CEO believes repairing preventable harm is a legitimate business expense." Noah watched from the side of the room as Ethan approved a restitution fund, legal assistance for affected families, and a small business protection policy for future developments. He refused to give the program Maya's name or contact her about it. "She'll think you're doing this for her," Noah said. "I started because of her," Ethan replied. "But that doesn't mean the others matter less." Maya learned about the program from her father. Robert Bennett called her one Sunday morning. "You sitting down?" "Why?" "Cole Meridian contacted us." Maya's stomach tightened. "What did they want?" "To reopen the settlement. They're offering restitution to former businesses. Not just ours." Maya closed her eyes. "Did Ethan call you?" "No. Independent firm. Apparently, this has been in review for weeks." "Weeks?" "Documentation says the audit started before Thanksgiving." Maya calculated the dates. Ethan had begun the investigation shortly after she told Eli what had happened, long before she discovered his identity and before he knew whether she would forgive him. Her father continued talking, but Maya barely heard him. She remembered Ethan's face whenever she mentioned her childhood. She had interpreted his silence as sympathy. Now she understood that some of it had been guilt. Still, guilt did not erase deception. She refused to let one good action rewrite everything. Months passed. Ethan returned publicly to his normal life, but people close to him noticed differences. He stopped attending events that existed only for publicity. He reduced his private staff. He spent time at community programs without photographers. Most importantly, he stopped testing people. When a woman at a charity dinner flirted openly with him and immediately asked about access to his investment network, Ethan simply smiled and declined. He no longer needed elaborate experiments to understand the difference between attention and affection. One afternoon in early spring, he received a handwritten envelope at his office. Inside was a short note from Maya. My parents accepted the restitution. Thank you for making it broader than our family. That doesn't change what happened between us, but I thought you should know it mattered. Ethan read it 5 times. He did not call her. He wrote back only, "You're right. It doesn't change what I did. I'm glad it helped. Thank you for telling me." Another month passed before they saw each other again. Ethan had been invited to speak at the community center where Maya volunteered. He nearly declined when he saw the address, afraid that appearing there would seem manipulative. Then Jamal, the teenager Ethan had helped months earlier, emailed him personally. "Mr. Cole, I figured out you were Eli. That was weird. But your resume advice worked, and I got the internship. Come talk to the kids about starting businesses." Ethan laughed for the first time that day and accepted. When he entered the community center, he was dressed simply in dark pants, a blue shirt, and an ordinary jacket. No disguise, no security visible, no attempt to look poorer or richer than he was. Maya was arranging chairs near the back. Their eyes met. Ethan stopped. She looked away first, but she did not leave. He gave his talk about entrepreneurship, failure, and the dangers of believing success made someone more valuable than anyone else. He never mentioned Maya or their history. Afterward, Jamal approached them both. "This is awkward," he announced. Maya laughed despite herself. Ethan smiled. "Very. I'm going to disappear strategically," Jamal said and walked away. Silence settled between them. Ethan looked at Maya. "You look good. So do you." She glanced at his clothes. "At least I assumed those belonged to the real you." "They do. Progress." He smiled faintly. "I deserve that." They walked toward the exit together. Outside, spring rain had begun, light enough that neither rushed for cover. "Why did you really do it?" Maya asked suddenly. Ethan knew exactly what she meant. "Pretend to be homeless?" She nodded. "Because I was arrogant enough to believe everyone else needed to prove something to me." Maya remained silent. Ethan continued. "I had been used by people. That part was real. But instead of learning better judgment, I decided I could create a test where I controlled all the information and everyone else had to pass. Including me. Especially you, once I started caring about you." He looked down. "The worst part is that you passed a test you never agreed to take, and I failed the only test that mattered." Maya studied him, which was whether I could trust someone enough to tell the truth. They reached the corner where months earlier she had first given him soup beneath a store awning. Maya noticed it too. "You remember?" she asked. "Every second. You looked freezing. I was freezing. You had a penthouse." "Yes." She shook her head, almost smiling. "That still makes me angry." "It should. And I still don't completely trust you." Ethan nodded. "You shouldn't yet." "Yet." He caught himself. "Sorry. That sounded presumptuous." Maya surprised him by laughing. "There's the billionaire. He's difficult to eliminate." They stood quietly while traffic moved through the wet street. Finally, Maya said, "Coffee." Ethan blinked. "What?" "We can have coffee." Hope rose so quickly that he almost embarrassed himself. "Now. Don't make it weird." "I'm trying very hard not to." They went to a small cafe where no one recognized Ethan. For nearly 2 hours they talked. Not about Eli, not primarily about money, and not about restoring what they once had. They talked like two people meeting again after discovering that everything was more complicated than they had believed. Ethan told her about his mother's death when he was 17, about his difficult relationship with his father, about inheriting leadership responsibilities before he felt ready. Maya told him about returning to school after dropping out to help her parents, about her dream of someday owning a neighborhood cafe, and about how humiliating it had been watching her parents rebuild their lives from nothing. Ethan offered no investment. Maya asked for none. When they left, she said, "If we do this again, one rule. Anything. No secrets designed to test me." Agreed. And no surprise private jets. Ethan considered that. What if we eventually need to travel somewhere very far? Maya gave him a look. "You're negotiating already." "Sorry. You're terrible at being normal." "I'm discovering that." They had coffee again the following week, then dinner, Then a walk through Central Park where Ethan was recognized by 3 tourists and Maya found his discomfort hilarious. Rebuilding trust took months. There were moments when Maya became suspicious over harmless omissions, and Ethan learned not to become defensive. He answered questions plainly. He introduced her to Noah, who immediately told Maya. For the record, I said the homeless plan was terrible. Maya pointed at him. I like you. Ethan sighed. Of course you do. A year after they first met, Maya opened a small cafe with savings, a modest bank loan, and money her parents received from the restitution settlement. Ethan respected her insistence on financing it without him. On opening morning, he arrived early wearing an apron Maya had bought specifically to embarrass him. You're on dishes, she said. I own hotel restaurants. Today you own that sink. Yes, ma'am. By noon, the cafe was crowded. Ethan stood behind the counter watching Maya laugh with customers, and he realized that the life he once believed he needed to disguise himself to find had appeared only after he stopped disguising anything. That evening, when the last customer left, Maya locked the door and sat beside him. You know what's strange? She said. What? When I first met you, I thought you were a man with nothing. Ethan looked around the cafe. I was. Maya shook her head. You had billions. That's not what I mean. She understood. Ethan had possessed extraordinary wealth, yet almost no trust, no emotional courage, and no belief that he could be loved without manipulating the conditions around him. Pretending to be homeless had not revealed whether Maya was worthy of his love. It had revealed how far he was willing to go to avoid vulnerability. Do you regret it? She asked. Ethan thought carefully. I regret lying to you. I regret using something as serious as homelessness as part of an experiment. I regret making you feel foolish for caring. He reached for her hand, but waited until she willingly placed hers in his. But I don't regret meeting you. Good answer. I've had practice. 2 years later, Ethan proposed in the same place where they had first met. There were no photographers, no orchestra, no luxury car waiting nearby. Just the old storefront awning, an early winter evening, and Maya laughing when she realized why he had brought her there. You cannot possibly think pretending to be homeless again would be romantic, she said. Absolutely not. Ethan pulled a small ring box from his coat. I'm done pretending. Her smile disappeared into stunned silence. Ethan lowered himself onto one knee. Maya Bennett, when I met you, I thought I was looking for someone who could love me without my money. What I found was someone who taught me that love isn't something you test. It's something you earn through honesty, especially when honesty scares you. Maya covered her mouth, tears appearing in her eyes. Ethan continued, You knew me when you thought I had nothing. You walked away when you learned I had everything because you valued truth more than wealth. And somehow, after I gave you every reason not to, you let me earn another chance. I don't want to hide from you again. I don't want to impress you, test you, rescue you, or buy a place in your life. I just want to build one with you. Will you marry me? Maya stared at him for several long seconds. Then she smiled. Yes. Ethan stood, and she pulled him into an embrace beneath the same awning where she had once handed a stranger a paper bag containing soup and a sandwich. Cars passed. People hurried along the sidewalk. Nobody nearby understood why one of the richest men in America was crying beside a small neighborhood cafe, and Ethan was grateful for that. Months later, when reporters eventually learned how Ethan and Maya had met, headlines focused on the billionaire who had pretended to be homeless to find true love. People treated the story like a fairy tale, but Maya always corrected anyone who described it that way. He didn't find love because he pretended to be poor, she once told a reporter. He almost lost it because he pretended to be someone he wasn't. Ethan, standing beside her, nodded. She's right. Their marriage never became perfect. No marriage did. Ethan remained wealthy. Maya remained stubbornly independent. They argued about schedules, work, family, and whether his habit of buying ridiculously expensive kitchen equipment for the cafe counted as helping or interfering. But they never again argued about who Ethan really was. He eventually expanded Cole Meridian's restitution policy into a permanent ethical development program requiring independent reviews before projects could displace small businesses. Maya continued running her cafe and later opened a second location, refusing Ethan's investment but occasionally allowing him to wash dishes when he needed reminding that billionaires were not exempt from basic chores. Every year on the anniversary of the night they met, Maya ordered turkey sandwiches and soup from her own kitchen and delivered them to local outreach organizations. Ethan always went with her, not disguised, not photographed, and not looking for proof of anyone's character. He simply carried the bags. Years earlier, Ethan Cole had stepped out of his penthouse believing that if he removed his fortune from the equation, he could finally discover whether true love existed. He had been asking the wrong question. The real question was never whether someone could love a billionaire while believing he was homeless. It was whether a man surrounded by wealth could become honest enough to let another person know him completely. Maya had cared for Eli because she believed a struggling stranger deserved dignity. She later loved Ethan because he learned that dignity required giving others the truth. His fortune had allowed him to create the disguise, but it could not save him when the disguise collapsed. Only accountability, patience, and change brought Maya back into his life. And in the end, the billionaire who had once believed he needed to become poor to find true love discovered something no balance sheet had ever taught him. The most valuable thing Maya gave him was not affection when she thought he had nothing, but trust after she knew exactly who he was.